Hello and welcome to the Caring for Kids radio show, brought to you by the Children's Hospital of Michigan Foundation. I'm your host, Larry Burns, President and CEO at the Children's Hospital of Michigan Foundation. We've got a great show planned tonight, discussing the issues that impact children locally, regionally, and nationally. Tonight, we're joined by Congresswoman Debbie Dingell, representing the 12th District of Michigan, Mr. Brian Gallagher, CEO of Reach Out and Read, Luanne Thomas Ewald, CEO of the Children's Hospital of Michigan, and Chuck Gatica, local TV legend with a passion for helping children. It's all coming up next on Children's Hospital of Michigan Foundation's Caring for Kids. Here are the great voice of the Great Lakes, News Talk 760 WJR. Before being elected to Congress, Debbie Dingell served one of Michigan's largest employers, the General Motors Corporation, and for more than 30 years serving as president of the GM Foundation and a senior executive responsible for public affairs. She led a number of efforts and initiatives related to young people and education stemming from her role as a Wayne State University governor and co-chair of the Children's Leadership Council. Congresswoman Dingell chaired the Michigan Infant Mortality Task Force, the Baby Your Baby Public Education Campaign. She was also appointed by Michigan Governor Jennifer Granholm to serve on the Early Childhood Investment Corporation and the Cherry Commission on Higher Education and Economic Growth. She resides in Dearborn with her husband, retired Congressman John Dingell of Michigan, and she holds a bachelor's degree in foreign services and a master's in liberal studies from Georgetown University. Congresswoman, welcome to Caring for Kids.
Larry, it's great to be with you. That's a mouthful of stuff.
Well, it is just a little bit of your history, and so we appreciate. I know how busy you are. I know how things in Washington these days are extremely busy and very important. So taking the time, we appreciate very much.
Talking about children is always something that you and I both like to do.
Absolutely, and appreciate it. And so I thought we'd start, but just talking about what our listeners need to know about the impact of current legislation in Congress and how you think this will impact children here in Michigan and even beyond.
I'm really worried because I think it's going to put children at serious risk. The proposal, as it is right now, and it's very much in flux, would seriously cut Medicaid in the state. The governor started Healthy Michigan with bipartisan support a couple of years ago, and once it passed, we reduced the uninsured in the state of Michigan by 50%. Nearly 700,000 people have insurance that did not have it before that. And I think a lot of people don't realize that 1.2 million children in Michigan are covered by Medicaid, and that 50% of the children in Michigan receive their health care coverage through Medicaid. Mm-hmm. The bill that is currently being considered is going to seriously cut those funds. It is really going to impact the kind of health care that our young people are going to receive.
Yeah, those are some astonishing figures, 50%. And we're talking with Congresswoman Debbie Dingell about Washington and issues impacting children and health care. And so besides yourself, who are some of the leading advocates advancing the agenda for children in Washington? Who do you think are really helping out?
Well, I think all of us in the Michigan delegation care about our young people. I think there's probably a different approach between different people. And when we're talking about our young people, I'm the proudest of I've done so much. When we're talking about infant mortality, and we did manage to reduce it in the 90s, but it's ensuring that people have access to prenatal care. And then I'm the proudest, I think, of the work that we did for the 0 through 5, which is ensuring that, one, we're making sure mothers are getting the prenatal care that they need, and then once a child is born, that they're getting proper nutrition, early education, the early reading, the early stimulation. And there are some national advocates like Rosa DeLaura and others who are really fighting hard to protect and make sure that we are taking care of our young children.
Yeah, and one of the things I learned early on in my career when I worked at Children's Hospital the first time was that children can't vote, and so they need people like you and others to be their advocates, and it's so very important. And one of the other things that was brought to my attention that, along with U.S. Representative Barbara Comstock from Virginia, there was a bipartisan Congressional Cancer Prevention Caucus to focus on ways we can stop cancer before it starts. As you very well know, the Children's Hospital of Michigan and our foundation support a number of oncology projects based in leukemia and some other things in partnership with Wayne State University and at Children's Hospital. And in all of these discussions, where do you think these types of things rank as it relates to important issues in Washington?
Well, I'm really worried about what is happening right now. I think we've worked very hard, not only over a year or two, but over decades, to try to focus and be advocates for our children and have people understand that by investing in them as they're young, then we're investing in all of our futures. As we always say, they're 25% of our population and 100% of our future.
Right.
So I now want to praise the work that the Children's Hospital is doing. Barbara and I are working on cancer prevention for everybody, from children through adults. And I think that people want to see people work together in a bipartisan way, and we need to be doing more of that. One of the things that happened last year that was the passage of the 21st Century Cures Act, which the bill put $6.3 billion over 10 years to fund biomedical research and would bring hope to millions of Americans who are fighting these devastating diseases like the childhood cancer that we were just talking about. And Michigan's Fred Upton was the sponsor, the introducer of this legislation, the lead. I co-sponsored it with him. But it really was the lead on it to really try to help families. We stopped investing in research and development over the last decade. We're not keeping up in the global world. And it was very, very, very important that this bill passed, which it did. It's one of the few bipartisan bills that passed the Congress last year.
Excellent, and we appreciate that very much. And I always enjoy hearing you on Paul W. and in the morning and seeing you at important community activities, and appreciate how accessible you are. And if listeners are wondering, what they can do to help this advocacy for children, or do you have any tips for them to reach out to you or others, and maybe sort of with a final comment about the importance of children in your world?
Kids need us to be their advocates. You really put your finger on it, Larry. There's a group called Michigan's Children. There are a number of other organizations that are fighting for so many of the issues, from health care to nutrition to education. We need to make sure that we're taking care of our kids from the time, as I said at the beginning, from before they're even born until they're able to get the education, encouraging them to get higher ed. Find something that you really care about, and then just go Google and see what groups are working on it. But the thing I would say the most is our children need us to be their advocates, be it on the school board, be it on making sure that they're getting enough to eat and getting nutritional meals. There are a lot of ways to get involved, and I would just encourage your listeners to get involved. Great.
Well, great advice, and with your leadership, their involvement can be duplicated by your efforts as well. So, Congresswoman Debbie Dingell, thank you very much for all you're doing and for taking the time to be on Caring for Kids.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me, and thanks for what you do for our young people.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you. And did you know that March is National Reading Month? And coming up next, we'll hear from Brian Gallagher from Reach Out and Read about the importance of reading to children when Caring for Kids continues here on the great voice of the Great Lakes, News Talk 760 WJR. Brian Gallagher is the Chief Executive Officer of Reach Out and Read. He joined Reach Out and Read in 2007 and was the Director of the National Programs before being the Chief Executive Officer. Mr. Gallagher holds a Master's of Public Administration from Suffolk University and a Bachelor's of Arts from Hamilton College. So, Brian, welcome to Caring for Kids.
Thank you very much, Larry. It's great to be with you today.
Appreciate it, and I think it's very appropriate that you're on our show. This is our second show of our new show, but March is National Reading Month, as I know it, and so I couldn't think of a better guest to have than the CEO of Reach Out and Read.
Well, thank you very much, and I want to thank the Children's Hospital of Michigan Foundation for supporting our program for many years. Without that local support, we wouldn't be able to do the work we do, so I'm very grateful.
Well, and you mentioned our foundation. We support the program locally with a grant, and then we also get a very generous grant from the Ford Motor Company Fund. So I want to shout out to Ford Motor Company and their generosity to help this program as well. And so for our listeners who maybe aren't as familiar with Reach Out and Read, can you give us an overview of what it's all about?
Sure. Reach Out and Read started in Boston as one program, was founded by pediatricians who saw the opportunity they had within the medical system to reach parents early with the message about the importance of reading aloud and actually not just give the message, but give a book. And that program, 27 years ago, is now a national network of over 5,800 clinical locations with 27,000 primary care providers incorporating the idea of reading aloud with a message about why that's so important starting in infancy and using a book as part of their well child visits for children at well child visits through age 5.
And is this passion for reading, is this something, I know you've been with Reach Out and Read since 2007. Is this something that you've been involved in prior to that as well?
Well, my background is in education, so children education and literacy has always been part of my passion. I started as actually a secondary education teacher in North Carolina, and language has always been of interest to me. I was a foreign language major at Hamilton College. And then saw a different perspective of education with workforce development when I came to Boston. So the opportunity to work with Reach Out and Read nearly a decade ago was new for me in terms of working with both pediatricians and early childhood. But there's certainly been a common thread about how do we support children, how do we support families and the education system so that we all reap the benefits of a more educated population.
Absolutely. And I spent 27 years in higher ed, so I clearly understand the importance of that, getting kids started on that pathway early on. And we're talking with Brian Gallagher, who's the CEO of Reach Out and Read. And one of the things that I thought I'd ask you about is reading out loud to children at age 0, I guess, to 3, and is what are the benefits of reading out loud, and is there a way that parents or even older siblings can have a sense that they're making a positive impact?
Absolutely. We know that the foundation for all learning really starts with strong relationships and nurturing environments, and that's why we start with children in infancy. From a foundational perspective, we know that reading aloud provides a way for parents and guardians and other loved ones to be with one another, frankly, associate voice, physical comfort, with the sounds that come from reading aloud and all of the other benefits. So that social emotional development is a key element at those early years for reading aloud. But we know that hearing language is a real significant part of building those early literacy skills, connecting words and images and the language we hear. And we also know that there's a richness in vocabulary that is not necessarily a part of day-to-day conversation, especially with babies.
Right.
We hear from our doctors quite often of parents say, "Well, what do I say to my baby? They're not speaking back to me." And so we talk about the books being a tool to engage children, to hear language in different contexts, hear different syntax, and they also get a chance to understand as they get older empathy and different people's perspectives. One of our favorite expressions is that books should be mirrors into our own worlds and yet windows into others. So it's really those pre-literacy skills that are so important for children to develop early on, so that when they do get to a formal education, and many children, their first formal education is kindergarten, they're not necessarily reading, but they're prepared to learn because they've got that foundation to succeed.
Great. And we're talking with Brian Gallagher from Reach Out and Read. And in that, you mentioned doctors. And so do you at Reach Out and Read, do you converse and work with pediatricians, and is that a relationship that over the country that the different hospitals like Children's Hospital of Michigan and others cultivate together?
That's exactly right. Reach Out and Read is a pediatric primary care program. We leverage the existing infrastructure of the health system to reach families through their child's primary care provider. And the reason that we were founded in that way, and we continue that model, is there's several reasons. One is we know that's where parents are going to bring their children in those early weeks, months, years of life, and often that pediatrician, family physician, nurse practitioner is maybe the only professional that parents are hearing from in those early years. So it's that trusted relationship that parents have with their child's doctor, but also the repeated visits and an opportunity for doctors to use the book as a developmental surveillance tool, kind of see some of the things that they want to see anyway, but also get insight into the home environment and the relationship that parents have with their child, and an opportunity to, over time, see as that child's language progressing. Instead of asking, does your child know any words?
Right.
You can point to the book. It's right there as part of the visit, and that child goes home with that book, so they know it's something very special for them around not just their physical well-being, but their long-term social, emotional, and intellectual well-being.
Yeah, and their pathway to further education.
Exactly right, and it's that early. That's why we start early, and our program goes through age 5 to really set that pathway well into those formal education years.
And so for this show, it's a show that's on from 7 to 8 on a Tuesday night on WJR, which is the great voice of the Great Lakes. There's a lot of parents and grandparents listening, and I was wondering if I could ask you, one piece or two pieces of advice for our listeners, to mom and dad and grandpa and grandmother about reading to children, so that they can go home and feel good about what they're trying to do for their grandchildren or their own children.
Well, I like to say read early and often. The more that you do it, this is a mutually enjoyable experience for parent, grandparent, and child, and also to keep it going, well into the years beyond when a child can read. My daughter is 8 and my son is 6, and we've continued that tradition, even though they're now on to books like Harry Potter, and that's such an important part of our own nighttime routine. She's got her book, but we have our book. But it started early, and that was part of our relationship. So it's just such a fun way to spend time together and decompress at the end of a day.
Yeah, and so my guess is, I learned recently that even exercising every day is important, even if you only exercise for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Because some people get caught up with, I don't have the time. Is it same with reading? If you have 10 minutes, is it worth doing?
Absolutely, even if it's 3 minutes. Especially with those younger children, their attention span's pretty short. So even if you can get 3 minutes with a 12-month-old, 18-month-old, a baby on your lap, just to look through some books, spend that time that child is very interested in the book, but they're also interested in that connection that they're developing with whoever's got that book that's reading to them.
Great advice, great program here in Detroit, here in Michigan, at Children's Hospital of Michigan Foundation. We're delighted to be part of it, and I want to thank you for being part of our show. Brian Gallagher.
Thank you, Larry. It's been a pleasure.
All righty. Stay in touch, please.
Will do.
That was Brian Gallagher, CEO of Reach Out and Read. And coming up next on Caring for Kids, we'll speak with Luanne Thomas Ewald, CEO of Children's Hospital of Michigan, when Caring for Kids continues right here on the great voice of the Great Lakes, News Talk 760 WJR. Luanne Thomas Ewald is CEO of Children's Hospital of Michigan. Luanne joined the DMC in 1993 and served in various capacities in women's services and business development. She's also a Children's Hospital of Michigan Foundation board member, therefore one of my bosses. She holds a Bachelor's of Science degree in Business Administration with a specialization in marketing from the great Marquette University. And a master's degree in hospital and health administration from another great university in Cincinnati, and that's Xavier University. Luanne, welcome to Caring for Kids.
Thank you, Larry. I'm happy to be here.
Delighted to have you here. You're the leader of the hospital, and this show is all about Children's Hospital of Michigan and the outreach that the hospital and the foundation and the impact it has on our kids of our state. So.
Thank you for having me. Children's Hospital of Michigan is one of the best hospitals in America, and we're just thrilled to have our partner with the Children's Hospital of Michigan Foundation. We're trying to move the health of children forward in this country, and we want to be the leaders. Excellent.
And we've had a really good guest list. We're going to talk to Chuck Gatica in a few minutes. He's going to join us as an ambassador, so I'm looking forward to that. We spoke to Congresswoman Dingell, and she very much cares for kids, and we're talking to the folks from Reach Out and Read as well, and so the show's all about kids. And so one of the things I wanted to get out there is that if anyone's driven by on Beaubien over the last year or so, they've seen a lot of construction. And so that construction is very exciting. So if you could tell our listeners a little bit about what's happening.
Absolutely. I would love to. We, in addition to being able to be seen off of Beaubien, you can also see it off of I-75, which is even more exciting.
Yeah. Permanent billboard.
We are building a much-needed brand new patient tower. That should be completely open within the next 12 months. Services will be phased in over the year. When we built the hospital many, many years ago, prior to me even being there, it was prior to all the new technology we have and computers and large MRIs. So we needed to bring the hospital up to 2017. And so we are having a brand new emergency department. Mm-hmm. We are having brand new operating rooms, brand new neonatal intensive care units, which will be state-of-the-art. Our pediatric intensive care unit will also be state-of-the-art, private rooms, which we were sorely lacking. So the patient experience will be amazing, and we cannot wait.
Absolutely. And I've worked in healthcare long enough to know how important it is to stay up to date with technology and facilities. And as you know, and some of our listeners know, I was at Children's from 1987 to 90. And we raised money for what was then the new ambulatory care
The new
facility.
Now old, right.
Yes, and it's been renovated twice, which made me feel very old.
Right.
But to see, and then there's the specialty center across the street.
Correct.
That's relatively new, correct?
Very new, a couple years old.
So that's awesome. And so that you mentioned the emergency room is, I know a lot of people who live in the suburbs or wherever that when something happens to their child, they go to the emergency room. So I have to believe the emergency room at Children's is an important element of how we take care of children.
It absolutely is. It is one of the busiest emergency rooms in this country.
Wow.
So you take the emergency room downtown where we see about 80,000 children a year, and you combine that with our emergency department out in Troy where we're seeing about 15,000 children a year. Those two sites are treating a lot of children and helping a lot of families. It is extremely busy.
And we're talking with Luanne Ewald, CEO of Children's Hospital Michigan. And one of the things about the emergency room and Children's Hospital in general is that it really crosses over every socioeconomic element of our communities. And so people from the suburbs or even as far out as other counties. And can you tell our listeners a little bit about where our patients come from, and is it statewide? Is it the region? And
absolutely. Actually, I wish everyone could see the map, because we treat patients from literally every county in the state of Michigan, with the exception of one county up north. And we're going to
have to go up there.
That's what I said. I'm like, we're going to have to go there over the summer and bring some doctors and nurses we can fill the map. But we literally treat patients from every single county in the state. And so, it is our honor and our privilege to do so, and we want to continue to be able to do so.
Excellent. And so you mentioned that the tower is going to be completed within the year.
Correct.
And any other programs or things that you want to mention about Children's Hospital? Or I know the facility in Troy is relatively new as well.
It is. The Troy facility is 1 year old. We celebrated our 1 year birthday on February 1st. All of the outpatient services that folks can get downtown, we have actually pushed out into the suburbs. We know families are busy. They have multiple children, and trying to juggle specialty pediatric appointments can be a challenge. So it's been really our goal over the past couple years to really push that specialty care out into the communities.
Good. And any other programs or new developments you want to mention before we let you go?
Sure. We're with the expansion of the new Children's Hospital Michigan, we are really looking at, with our new ORs and our new state-of-the-art equipment, we're really looking to expand our transplant programs, our orthopedics programs, our neonatology program. I mean, we care for the sickest children in this state, and we can't wait to do it with brand new digs.
Awesome. And I am honored to be part of the team and the foundation and the hospital and growing together. It's really exciting. And this show, we're going to have doctors on. Last month we had Dr. Taub on, and we had the governor on. And so we look forward to having you on frequently and your colleagues, and talk about such a great place, Children's Hospital Michigan.
Absolutely. Anytime. We'd be happy to do it.
Thank you. That's Luanne Thomas Ewald, CEO of our very own Children's Hospital Michigan. And coming up next, as I mentioned, we're going to talk with a legend, and that's Chuck Gallagher from WDIV and a lot of other things. He has a huge heart and a passion for helping children, and now we're going to put him to work. And that's on Caring for Kids as we continue here on the great voice of the Great Lakes, News Talk 760 WJR. Chuck Gallagher is an award-winning TV personality. Chuck worked at WDIV TV for 30 years.
Still there. Still, it's like the mafia.
There.
You can't
leave. Exactly. Been in the market for over 35 years. Started when he was 12. Chuck has been awarded 3 Emmy Awards for various categories in television news. He was a primary substitute weather anchor for Al Roker on NBC's Weekend Today show. Chuck holds a master's in ministry and leadership from Cornerstone, among other things. And he's in the studio with me today and Caring for Kids. So Chuck Gallagher, welcome.
Good to see you.
It's good to see you.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Appreciate it. And I know that a lot of our listeners want to know what you're up to. They miss seeing you at nighttime.
Well, thanks.
And I know you're very busy, and so I thought I'd ask you to start by giving us an overview of what you're up to.
Well, I left full-time TV news about 2 years ago, and still involved with the news department at Channel 4. And they asked me to come back and co-host a morning show, kind of a fun, light look at Detroit and what's going on, called Live in the D. So I've been at that going on a year and a half. And outside of that world, I continue to navigate this idea of my second half. God willing, I have another second half to give back. And that includes everything from helping to found a theater in Northville to working in ministry and projects that help people, and now being able to work with you and your team, which will be a joy.
Yes, we're going to talk about that. We're extremely excited. And some 35 5 years in the market, 30 years at WDIV, and what are some of the things that come to mind about either your accomplishments or just things that are most memorable?
I think in my time here, finally, even after naming a building Renaissance, we're actually seeing the real Renaissance. I mean, you can tell something's happening. So there's excitement there. For me, all of my kids, 5 kids, they were all born in Detroit, not the suburbs. Having gone to church in Detroit 12 years of the 35 we've been here. So much of my life, even though I grew up in Chicago, I'm a Detroiter. Mm-hmm. And so many of the milestones in life have occurred here. My parents moved here, my sister, my brother. And so for me, Detroit is family. And I hope people who have watched over the years or who still do or have listened on the radio, I was part of radio for so many years too, would think that that's the way I think of them, and that's a high compliment if that's the way they think of me.
Absolutely, and I believe that they do. And so you mentioned about a new affiliation with the Children's Hospital Michigan Foundation. So you and I first met when you were kind enough to have us on your morning show.
Yeah.
And we talked about the Coles program that the foundation supports through Coles. And talks about safety for babies and that. And then my boss, Matt Friedman, and you have known each other a long time.
Sure.
And I think you had talked about the foundation, and so we got together, and I was most impressed with your sincere willingness to help. And we're putting together a new brand platform for the foundation. We are trying to make sure more people know about the great programs the foundation supports at Children's Hospital of Michigan. But we also support some other programs that help kids. And so, I might ask you of why Children's Hospital of Michigan Foundation when you have so many other great things in the community.
Well, first of all, I think it's an honor to be an ambassador for an organization that deals with kids, helps kids. And, part of my journey has been venturing off into a place called the Halftime Institute, which deals with somehow, all of us who age in our lives, getting to that point where, God willing, we get a second half. And part of that journey for me was creating a mission statement, a personal mission statement. And my personal mission statement is to be a force for good and to try to encourage others to do the same. And so for me, doing good is part of my DNA, and I take it seriously. And to see an organization like yours, and, to be part of it, to understand that, you're affiliated with Children's, where even one of our kids was treated at one point.
You told me that, yeah.
But then to see all the other great things you're doing, and whether it's in reading, smoke alarms, and being an advocate, for me to be able to look people in the eye when I meet them in person, or TV or radio, wherever it is, and say, come with me on this journey to be a force for good. And if I can do that with the Children's Hospital of Michigan Foundation and be an encourager for people to consider that notion, what better thing to do?
Absolutely. And we're talking with Chuck Gadick, a local TV legend.
That means I'm old.
No, you look great. And now an ambassador of our Children's Hospital of Michigan and our foundation. So it's great to say those words. And so one of the things when you and I had lunch the first time, I said I brought on 6 interns from Wayne State University, some of them who are in the studio right now. And I wanted to make sure you were comfortable working with interns. And you immediately jumped on that and said, I love working with interns. And so talk a little bit about what you hope to do and the things that being an ambassador might mean for you.
Well, working with interns, it's great because you feel the energy. I mean, you were at the university for so long, so you feel, and there is such a thing as mentoring, which is a joy, but then there's also reverse mentoring. Like I can ask them how to make my Siri work better. I don't know.
Exactly.
They're going to know things. I have no idea. So there's that. But, to be an ambassador, to go out with the flag and for all the great new things that I know you'll be talking about, the directions that you're headed, to be a one-stop shopping place in Southeast Michigan, certainly in the state, maybe in the region, the nation.
Yep. That's our hope.
Put it, right?
Yep.
Where people can get information about issues related to children's health. So here we are with 5 kids and 2 grandkids. I would say we're kind of an average family. Big things don't seem to go wrong, and yet as I'm sitting here listening to you start the show, I'm reminded that we had a son, or have a son that has an autoimmune disease. His liver was attacked, and at one point we thought he needed a liver transplant.
Right.
We have another son that fell and broke his femur. That's not an easy thing to do.
Right.
And yet life goes on. And so those things can happen in anybody's family. And to be able to step out and advocate for families and children on your behalf and the organization, to me, it's an honor and a privilege. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, so are we. And, one of the first things we're going to be doing is we've created a new event. We are going to have an event that the foundation is going to be calling Derby for Kids. It's a Kentucky Derby party. It's on May 6th of this year. It's going to be at the Grosse Pointe War Memorial, which is a great location. It's on the lake. Hopefully it'll be a beautiful day. People get to wear their derby hats, bow ties, boaters, whatever they want to wear.
Beautiful.
And you're going to be there.
I will.
Greeting people and talking about what you just mentioned about being an ambassador for the foundation. The funds from this event are going to be dedicated to cancer programs at the hospital.
Okay, great.
And so Dr. Jeffrey Taub, who was on the show last month, will be there, and we might even talk just a little bit about what they're doing and some of the things that make Children's Hospital of Michigan a very special place. And this event, we hope, grows into a annual, large, fun party for a good cause, and you'll be part of that.
Can I come by horse?
You can come by horse.
Okay, all right, that's
but
great.
But you must have a derby outfit.
Oh, all right, I'll get to work on it.
So you can get to it, and I can help you on the bow tie.
But it's all to
if
help
you want.
caring for kids, right?
It's all to help caring for kids, and so we're delighted and honored that you have decided to join us, and you'll be on this show frequently, and you'll be in the community, and hopefully people will stop you and say, Chuck Gatica used to be with WDIV, now he's with Children's Hospital of Michigan Foundation.
You know who will pull that off? All your interns.
Yes, exactly. So,
Larry, it's good to see you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. That was Chuck Gatica, local TV legend, and now a Children's Hospital of Michigan Foundation ambassador. Thank you for joining us for the Caring for Kids show. I'm your host, Larry Burns, President and CEO of Children's Hospital of Michigan Foundation. The Children's Hospital of Michigan Foundation is proud to sponsor this program. For more information on Caring for Kids, you can visit us at www.chmfoundation.org/caring for kids. Please follow us on Twitter at CFK Radio Show, CFK Radio Show on Twitter. Feel free to email any questions to caringforkids@chmfoundation.org. And as always, if you have a question for me, I'm larry.burns@chmfoundation.org. Join us again next time at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, April 28th, for more discussion about the health and health care of children, right here on the Children's Hospital of Michigan Foundation's Caring for Kids. On the great voice of the Great Lakes, News Talk 760, WJR.